My name is Wayne Miller, and I just turned 20 today. The birthday cake sits in front of me, 20 candles flickering as my family sings. My mom, Sarah, stands beside my dad, Jack, both smiling, but something feels off. As I blow out the candles, Mom touches my shoulder and whispers words that freeze my entire world. Are you ready to meet your real dad now? Wait. What? Real dad? My brain short-circuits as I stare at Jack, the only father I have ever known. Everything I believed about my life suddenly feels like a lie. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if family secrets have ever turned your world upside down. Trust me, this journey gets intense. Before that earth-shattering birthday revelation, my life seemed perfectly normal. We lived in a modest two-story house in suburban Pennsylvania, a typical middle-class American family. Dad, I mean Jack, worked as an automotive engineer at a local manufacturing plant, while Mom taught third grade at the elementary school 3 blocks from our house. Our neighborhood had tree-lined streets where kids played basketball in driveways and families gathered for summer barbecues. Jack always seemed like the perfect father figure. He taught me how to throw a baseball, helped with science fair projects, and spent countless weekends teaching me how to fix cars in our garage. His hands were always slightly stained with engine grease, no matter how much he scrubbed them clean. Those hands guided mine as I learned to change oil, replace spark plugs, and troubleshoot engine problems. You got a natural talent for this, Wayne, he would say, beaming with pride whenever I figured something out on my own. Mechanics is in your blood. Except now, I realize it might not have been in my blood at all. Despite our close relationship, there was always something slightly distant about Jack. Small moments where he would look at me with an expression I could never quite identify. Something between sadness and fear. At the time, I attributed it to his naturally reserved personality. Jack was never the type to gush with emotion or freely express his feelings. Your father just needs time to process things in his own way, Mom would explain whenever I felt frustrated by his emotional walls. He loves you more than you know. I remember one fishing trip when I was 12. We sat in a small boat on Lake Erie at dawn, the water still and quiet around us. For hours, we barely spoke, just casting our lines and enjoying the peace. Then out of nowhere, Jack said, "No matter what happens in life, Wayne, I want you to know I will always be here for you." At the time, I thought it was just one of those random dad speeches. Now I wonder if he was preparing me for the truth that would eventually come out. Mom always seemed anxious around my birthdays. While most mothers get excited about planning parties and baking cakes, Sarah would become tense weeks before the date. Her smile would tighten, and she would throw herself into excessive cleaning and organizing. As a kid, I assumed she just wanted everything perfect for my special day. Looking back, I realized she was carrying the weight of an enormous secret that got heavier with each passing year. There were other signs, too, had I been perceptive enough to notice them. The absence of baby photos during my first few months. The way relatives sometimes made odd comments about how I came into the family. The heated whispered arguments between my parents that would abruptly stop when I entered the room. Every summer, we would take family vacations to Ocean City, Maryland. Jack would rent a beach house for 2 weeks, and we would spend our days building sandcastles, swimming in the Atlantic, and eating boardwalk fries drenched in vinegar. During these trips, Jack always tried extra hard to create perfect family memories. He would insist on taking hundreds of photos, organizing special outings, and making sure everyone was having the best time ever. "This is what family is all about," he would declare, putting his arm around my shoulders as we watched the sunset over the ocean. Now I wonder if he was trying to convince himself as much as create memories for me. School events were another area where I noticed subtle differences. During parent-teacher conferences, Jack would let Mom do most of the talking, nodding along but rarely asking questions. At my high school graduation, he clapped until his hands were red when my name was called. But later that night, I found him sitting alone on the back porch, staring into the darkness with an expression I now recognize as fear. "You okay, Dad?" I had asked. "Just proud of you, son. Really proud." His voice had cracked slightly on the word son. Despite these moments of distance, our home was fundamentally loving and stable. I never wanted for anything important. Both my parents attended every football game, applauded at every school concert, and supported my decisions about college and career choices. We ate dinner together most nights, sharing stories about our days and making each other laugh. We had holiday traditions that remained consistent year after year. Mom's special stuffing recipe at Thanksgiving, decorating the Christmas tree while playing Elvis Christmas albums, and watching the ball drop on New Year's Eve with hot chocolate and homemade cookies. I had friends whose parents were divorced, who lived with step-parents, or who rarely saw one parent. By comparison, my family life seemed blessed and uncomplicated. Jack and Sarah had been married for 22 years and still held hands when walking through the mall. They presented a united front on house rules, curfews, and expectations about grades and behavior. They taught me about respect, responsibility, and the importance of honesty. The irony of that last lesson wasn't lost on me as I sat frozen at my birthday table, candle smoke still rising from my cake, trying to process my mother's question about meeting my real father. My 20th birthday had started like any other special occasion in our family. Mom prepared my favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with bacon and freshly squeezed orange juice. Jack gave me a card with $200 and a new set of professional mechanic tools for my part-time job at the local auto shop. My younger sister Lily, 14 and perpetually annoyed by everything, even managed to be nice, giving me a vintage band poster she had found at a thrift store. The day continued normally. A few friends stopped by with gifts and well wishes. My girlfriend Grace brought cupcakes from my favorite bakery and a thoughtfully selected book about classic muscle cars. By evening, it was just family for the official birthday dinner and cake. Mom had prepared lasagna, garlic bread, and Caesar salad, my requested birthday meal since I was 10 years old. The dining room was decorated with blue and silver streamers, my favorite colors, and a happy birthday banner hung across the archway between the dining room and living room. The scene was picture perfect, everyone smiling, the house filled with the smells of Italian food and birthday cake. After dinner, Mom brought out the cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, decorated with a car design piped in blue icing. 20 candles flickered as they sang happy birthday. Jack's arm was around Sarah's waist. Lily filmed the moment on her phone, and Grace squeezed my hand under the table. I felt truly happy and completely unaware that my life was about to implode. I closed my eyes, made a wish, ironically, for everything to stay this good, and blew out the candles in one breath. Everyone clapped, and Mom started cutting the cake. That's when she leaned down next to me, her hand on my shoulder, and whispered those world-shattering words. "Are you ready to meet your real dad now?" The room seemed to tilt sideways. I looked up at her, certain I had misheard. "What did you just say?" My voice sounded strange, distant. Mom glanced nervously at Jack, who had gone completely still, the knife poised above the cake in his hand. The silence in the room became deafening. "I think it is time," she said, louder now. "We always agreed we would tell you when you turned 20. "Tell me what?" I asked, though deep down, I already understood the horrifying implication. My eyes darted between Sarah and Jack, looking for any sign this was an elaborate, tasteless birthday joke. Jack carefully set down the cake knife and sank into his chair. His face had lost all color. "Your mother is right," he said, his voice barely audible. "We should have this conversation." Grace looked confused, and Lily stopped filming, her teenage bravado replaced with genuine concern. "What is going on?" Lily asked. I stood up so abruptly that my chair crashed to the floor behind me. "Jack is not my biological father? Is that what you are telling me? On my birthday? In front of everyone?" The words felt bitter and wrong in my mouth. Mom reached for my arm. "Wayne, please, we thought it would be better to wait until you were old enough to understand." I jerked away from her touch. "Understand what? That my whole life has been a lie? That everyone in this room knew something fundamental about my identity that I did not?" "Not everyone," Jack said quickly. "Lily did not know either. And we never lied to you. I am your father in every way that matters." But I was beyond rational thought. 20 years of false identity crashed down around me. Every memory with Jack suddenly felt tainted, questionable. Who was I if not Jack Miller's son? What parts of my personality, my appearance, my talents, came from some stranger's DNA? So who is he? I demanded, my voice rising despite the shocked expressions on Grace and Lily's faces. Some random guy? A one-night stand? A sperm donor? Wayne! My mother's voice cracked with hurt. It was not like that. Daniel was someone I loved very much before I met Jack. Daniel? The name felt alien on my tongue. He has a name. He is a real person. Does he know about me? Has he been out there somewhere all this time? Knowing I exist but not caring enough to be part of my life? Jack stood up then, reaching for me. Son, please listen. Do not call me that. The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. The hurt that flashed across Jack's face was devastating, but my anger pushed aside any guilt. You do not get to call me son, after lying to me my entire life. The room fell into shocked silence. Lily had tears streaming down her face. Grace looked like she wanted to comfort me, but did not know how. Mom had collapsed into a chair, her hands covering her face. And Jack just stood there, shoulders slumped, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. I grabbed my car keys from the sideboard and headed for the door. Wayne, please do not leave like this, Mom called after me. I turned back one last time. You had 20 years to tell me the truth. I think I deserve 20 minutes to process it alone. I slammed the door behind me, the sound reverberating through the quiet neighborhood. In my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, unable to even start the engine as waves of shock and betrayal washed over me. Everything I thought I knew about myself had been called into question in an instant. My reflection in the rearview mirror suddenly looked like a stranger's. Whose eyes were those? Whose nose? Whose mouth? Not Jack's, as I had always believed. Some unknown man named Daniel had given me these features. Eventually, I started the car and drove aimlessly through town, past my high school, past the park where Jack taught me to ride a bike, past the ice cream shop where we celebrated good report cards. Each familiar landmark now seemed to mock me with its connection to a family narrative that had been partly fiction. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from Grace, from Mom, even from Lily. I ignored them all. What could anyone possibly say to make this better? How could I go back to that house and face them again, knowing they had collectively maintained this deception for my entire life? As I drove, questions multiplied in my mind. Why tell me now? Who exactly was this Daniel person? Did he have other children? Did I have half-siblings somewhere? Was he even alive? Did he know I existed? Did he ever ask about me? By the time I finally parked at the scenic overlook outside town, a place I often came to think, my initial shock had crystallized into a cold, hard anger. The kind that sits in your chest like a block of ice, numbing everything around it. The birthday cake was probably still sitting on the dining table, my unopened presents scattered around it, evidence of the celebration that had transformed into something unrecognizable. My entire identity felt fractured, split between the Wayne I thought I was, and this new Wayne with unknown origins. I had grown up secure in the knowledge of who I was and where I came from. Now that foundation had crumbled beneath my feet, leaving me suspended in a frightening uncertainty. For 3 days, I effectively disappeared from my family's life. I crashed on my college roommate Tanner's couch, ignored dozens of messages, and called in sick to my part-time job at the auto shop. I needed space to process the nuclear bomb that had been dropped on my identity. My phone continued to buzz with notifications, each one increasing my anxiety. Grace texted to check if I was safe. Lily sent tearful voice messages saying none of this was her fault and begging me to come home. Jack sent just one text. I love you, no matter what. But it was my mother's messages that were the most frequent and increasingly desperate. Please, Wayne, let me explain everything. This isn't how we wanted to tell you. I'm so sorry for the timing. Please call me. We need to talk about this as a family. I'm worried about you. Just let me know you're safe. After 72 hours of avoidance, My anger had dulled enough to recognize I couldn't run forever. I needed answers. So, I texted Mom to meet me at Riverfront Coffee, a neutral location where I felt less vulnerable than I would at home. When I arrived, Mom was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 untouched cups of coffee. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her usually neat hair pulled back messily, dark circles under her reddened eyes. She stood when she saw me, clearly fighting the urge to rush over and hug me. Instead, she waited, as I slowly made my way to the table and sat down across from her. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice hoarse. "I've been so worried." "I needed time," I replied flatly. 20 years worth of lies takes more than a few hours to process. She flinched at the word lies, but didn't argue. "I know you have questions. About 1 million of them. Let's start with the basics. Who exactly is Daniel?" Mom took a deep breath. "Daniel Hawkins was my college boyfriend. We were together for almost 3 years at Penn State. We were young, in love, planning a future together. So what happened? Life happened. Daniel got an incredible job offer in California after graduation. I was committed to my teaching program here in Pennsylvania. We tried long distance for a few months. But she stared into her coffee. It fell apart. We broke up. And then you found out you were pregnant." She nodded. 6 weeks after we ended things. I called him right away, but he was different, colder. He said he'd just started seeing someone new, that the timing was terrible, that he couldn't handle a child from across the country. "So he just abandoned you? Abandoned me?" The pain of rejection from someone I'd never met surprised me with its intensity. It wasn't quite that simple. He offered financial support, but made it clear he wasn't interested in being a father. He was building his career, traveling constantly. A baby didn't fit his plans. "And you were okay with that?" I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. Mom's eyes flashed with unexpected anger. Of course I wasn't okay with it. I was 22, scared, pregnant, with no job yet and my boyfriend moving on without me. My parents were furious. They're old-fashioned, you know that. They told me I had made my bed and needed to figure it out. This was a side of my grandparents I hadn't seen, though their strict nature had always been evident during our visits. So what happened next? When does Jack enter this story? Mom's expression softened. I started teaching at Lincoln Elementary. I was about 4 months along, beginning to show. Jack was the older brother of another teacher, Jenny. He came to help set up computers in the classroom one weekend. We got talking. "And he didn't mind that you were pregnant with another man's child?" I found that hard to believe. Mind? Wayne? That was one of the things that made me fall in love with him. While other men in my life were running away from responsibility, Jack ran toward it. He said he'd always wanted a family, and that the package it came in didn't matter to him. I tried to reconcile this with the stoic, sometimes distant man I knew. "So you got married before I was born?" 2 months before. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. And Daniel knew that another man was going to raise his child? Mom shifted uncomfortably. We told him. He seemed relieved, honestly. Sent a check as a wedding gift that we never cashed. And she hesitated. "And what?" "And signed away his parental rights, so Jack could adopt you legally." The clinical coldness of this arrangement hit me hard. Some man had signed a paper giving away any claim to me, like I was property to be transferred. So he never wanted to meet me? Never even saw a photo? Mom looked genuinely pained. In the beginning, no. He made it clear he wanted a clean break. Over the years, I sent a few photos and updates to his email, but he rarely responded. Until about 5 years ago. What happened 5 years ago? He reached out to me. Said he'd been thinking about you, wondering what you were like. Said he regretted his choices. Asked if there might ever be a possibility of meeting you. My heart pounded painfully in my chest. "And you didn't tell me? You were 15, Wayne. In the middle of high school, dealing with normal teenage stuff. Jack and I discussed it extensively. We decided to wait until you were an adult, able to handle the emotional complexity of the situation. That wasn't your decision to make." I slammed my palm on the table, causing nearby customers to look our way. Lowering my voice, I continued, "You had no right to keep this from me. Either of you. Maybe we were wrong," she admitted quietly. "We thought we were protecting you. We agreed to tell you when you turned 20. Jack suggested 18, but I pushed for 20. That's on me. So the birthday revelation was planned? You couldn't have found a private moment, just the three of us? You had to drop this bomb in front of my girlfriend and sister?" Mom's eyes welled with tears. "That part was a mistake. I got emotional seeing you blow out your candles, thinking about how fast you've grown up, realizing it was finally time to tell you the truth. The words just came out. I never meant to hurt you like this." I sat back, trying to absorb everything. "Does Daniel know you've told me?" "Yes. I called him the next day. And he wants to meet you, if you're willing. He lives in New York now, only a few hours' drive. He's remarried, has 2 younger children, a successful business. The idea that I had half-siblings out there was another shock. How convenient for him to waltz into my life now that all the hard parenting work is done. Wayne, people make mistakes, especially young people. Daniel wasn't ready to be a father then. He's a different person now. And Jack? How does he feel about all this?" Mom looked down. "Terrified. He's afraid of losing you." "Well, he should have thought about that before lying to me my entire life," I said bitterly. "Jack has never, ever treated you as anything less than his son. He loves you more than anything in this world. If he loved me, he would have told me the truth. The truth is that he chose you, Wayne, when he didn't have to. The truth is he stayed up nights with you when you were teething, taught you to ride a bike, coached your little league team, helped you apply to colleges. The truth is, he's been your father in every way that matters." Her words hit me like a physical blow. Despite my anger, I couldn't deny Jack's constant presence in my life, his unwavering support. "I need time to process all this," I finally said. "Of course." Mom reached across the table but stopped short of touching my hand. "Whatever you decide about meeting Daniel, please don't shut out Jack. This would destroy him." As I stood to leave, Mom asked quietly, "Will you come home now?" "Not yet," I said. "I'll stay with Tanner a few more days. I'll let you know when I'm ready." Walking out of that coffee shop, I felt both enlightened and more confused than ever. I had answers, but they only spawned more questions. Who was I now? The son of Jack, who raised me? Of Daniel, who created me? Or someone caught in between, belonging fully to neither world? The next 2 weeks became a blur of sleepless nights and directionless days. I extended my stay on Tanner's couch, much to his roommate's annoyance, and barely attended my summer classes at the community college. My thoughts were a constant storm, never settling on one emotion long enough for me to process it fully. Anger would give way to curiosity, then sadness, then betrayal, cycling endlessly until I felt mentally exhausted. I called in sick to the auto shop so many times that my boss Thomas finally demanded a face-to-face meeting. "Look, Wayne," he said, arms crossed in his cluttered office that smelled perpetually of motor oil and coffee. "Whatever's going on in your personal life, you've got to find a way to function. I've known you since you were 16, and you've never been unreliable before." I hesitated, then decided the simple truth was easiest. "I just found out Jack isn't my biological father." Thomas's tough expression softened immediately. "Ah, hell. That's rough, kid. How's Jack taking it?" "Jack knew all along. Everyone knew except me." Thomas nodded slowly. "Jack Miller is one of the most solid men I've ever met. Brought you in here for your first job, made sure I knew you had talented hands," his words. "Never missed a career day. Always checked your work when he picked you up. That man loves you something fierce." His perspective made me uncomfortable. It was easier to stay angry than to acknowledge the complexity of the situation. "I need another week off," I said, changing the subject, "to get my head straight." Thomas agreed, but his parting words followed me. "Don't judge a man's whole life by one decision, Wayne, especially when that decision was made out of love." Back at Tanner's apartment, I finally did what I'd been avoiding. I searched for Daniel Hawkins online. Within minutes, I found him. CEO of Hawkins Digital Solutions, a successful marketing firm with offices in New York and Los Angeles. His company website featured a professional headshot of a man in his early 40s, with dark hair slightly graying at the temples, strong jawline, and eyes that were unnervingly similar to my own. Further searching revealed a feature in a business magazine from last year, discussing his journey from college entrepreneur to industry leader. The article mentioned his wife Catherine, a pediatric surgeon, and their 2 children, Amelia, age 8, and Luke, age 6. There it was in black and white, confirmation of my half-siblings. 2 children Daniel had chosen to parent, while abandoning me before I was even born. The knowledge sat like a stone in my stomach. I spent hours scrolling through whatever information I could find about him. His company's charitable initiatives, speaking engagements at marketing conferences, a few personal photos on his company's social media showing him sailing, receiving awards, standing proudly with his family. One particular image stopped my scrolling. Daniel at a father-daughter dance with little Amelia, who wore a blue dress that matched his tie. They both had the same smile I saw in my own mirror. I slammed my laptop closed, suddenly nauseated. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. Day 15 of radio silence. I miss you. Whatever you're going through, you don't have to do it alone. Poor Grace. In the midst of my identity crisis, I'd completely neglected our relationship. She had tried to reach out multiple times, but I'd responded with only the briefest reassurances that I was alive and needed space. Now, reading her message, I felt a pang of guilt for shutting out someone who had done nothing wrong. I texted back. Sorry. Can we meet tomorrow? Coffee place near campus at 2? Her reply was immediate. I'll be there. When I saw Grace the next day, her face showed a mixture of relief and hurt. She hugged me tightly before we sat down. You look terrible, she said bluntly. Feel terrible too, I admitted. Want to tell me what's been going on? Because finding out about your dad's situation and then watching you disappear has been pretty confusing. I explained everything. The birthday revelation, the conversation with my mother, what I'd learned about Daniel. Grace listened without interruption, her expression softening as she understood the magnitude of what I was processing. That's a lot, she said when I finished. But can I be honest about something? Please. You're being kind of unfair to Jack. And your mom. I started to protest, but Grace held up her hand. Let me finish. Yes, they should have told you sooner. That was wrong. But Wayne, Jack chose to be your father when he didn't have to. He chose you. And from everything you've ever told me about him, he's been an amazing dad. But he lied. He protected you. There's a difference. Maybe they made the wrong choice about when to tell you. But the choice to love you and raise you as his own, that was the right one. I stared at my coffee, unable to refute her logic but still caught in my emotional response. And honestly, Grace continued, you're handling this like a child, not the 20-year-old man I thought you were. Hiding out, ignoring everyone who loves you, wallowing in self-pity. Her words stung precisely because they contained truth. What would you do? I challenged. If everything you knew about yourself was suddenly questioned? Grace's expression softened. I'd be upset too. But Wayne, nothing fundamental about you has changed. You're still the same person you were before your birthday. Your DNA doesn't define who you are. Your choices do. And right now, you're choosing to hurt people who love you. After Grace left, her words echoed in my mind. Was I being childish? Unfair? The thought brought fresh waves of confusion and defensiveness. But somewhere beneath the chaos of emotions, a small voice acknowledged she might be right. That evening I received an unexpected text from Lily. Mom and Dad think I don't know you're staying at Tanner's, but Bryce's older sister lives in the same building and saw you there. I miss you. This sucks for everyone, not just you. My 14-year-old sister, showing more maturity than me, was another uncomfortable reality check. The next day, while walking across campus, I spotted a man who, from a distance, looked remarkably like Daniel's photos. My heart raced as I quickened my pace to catch up, only to discover it was a stranger with merely a passing resemblance. The intensity of my reaction troubled me. Why was I so affected by the possibility of seeing a man I'd never met? That night, unable to sleep on Tanner's increasingly uncomfortable couch, I faced an uncomfortable truth. I was curious about Daniel. Despite my anger and sense of abandonment, part of me wanted to meet him, to see this other half of my genetic makeup in person, to understand what parts of myself might be explained by his existence. The realization brought a new anxiety. Did wanting to meet Daniel somehow betray Jack? Would pursuing this connection damage my relationship with the man who had actually raised me? The man whose disappointed face still haunted my thoughts? I thought about what Grace had said about choices defining us more than DNA. Jack had chosen to be my father. Now I faced my own choice, whether to meet the man who had chosen not to be. After 3 weeks of emotional turmoil, I finally texted my mother. "I want to meet Daniel." Her response came within minutes. "Are you sure you're ready?" No, I wasn't sure at all. But the questions burning inside me wouldn't be extinguished without answers. Only Daniel could provide. Yes, set it up. 2 days later, I found myself sitting in an upscale restaurant in Philadelphia, nervously adjusting my water glass and checking my watch every 30 seconds. Mom had arranged everything, telling me Daniel was driving down from New York specifically for this meeting. I had refused her offer to accompany me. This needed to be my experience alone. The restaurant, with its white tablecloths and soft lighting, felt unnecessarily formal for what was already an overwhelmingly intense situation. I had arrived 20 minutes early out of anxiety, and now regretted it as each passing minute stretched my nerves tighter. I had prepared questions in my mind, rehearsed scenarios, imagined what Daniel might say and how I would respond. None of it adequately prepared me for the moment the maitre d' led a man to my table, and I looked up into a face that reflected elements of my own. Daniel Hawkins was tall, well-dressed in a business-casual way that suggested money without flaunting it. His dark hair was indeed graying at the temples, and the resemblance between us was subtle but undeniable, the shape of our eyes, the line of our jaw. He hesitated briefly before extending his hand. "Wayne," he said, his voice deeper than I expected. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." I shook his hand automatically, a strange sensation coursing through me at this first physical contact with my biological father. We both sat, an awkward silence descending as the waiter poured water and handed us menus. "I'm not hungry," I said, pushing the menu aside. "Neither am I," Daniel admitted, doing the same. Too nervous, honestly. That simple admission of vulnerability surprised me. In my imagination, Daniel had always been coldly confident, callously unaffected by our meeting. "I don't know where to start," I said finally. Daniel nodded. "Maybe I should start by saying that I owe you an explanation and an apology. Did you know about me all this time?" He took a deep breath. "Yes and no. I knew your mother was pregnant when we broke up. I knew she had the baby, you. I knew she married Jack, and that he adopted you legally. And that was fine with you? Just signing away your child?" Daniel winced. At the time, yes. I was 23, focused entirely on my career, moving across the country, starting a new relationship. The idea of being responsible for a child terrified me. He met my eyes directly. It was selfish and cowardly. I won't try to justify it. His honesty was disarming. I had expected excuses, not straightforward acknowledgement of his failure. So what changed? "Mom said you reached out 5 years ago." Daniel rotated his water glass slowly. Many things changed. I matured. I had children of my own, and understood what I had given up. And, he paused, my father died. "What does your father have to do with this?" "Everything, in a way. My father was a difficult man, cold, demanding, never satisfied with anything I achieved. I spent my entire youth and early adulthood trying to earn his approval." Daniel's expression grew distant. "When I found out Sarah was pregnant, my first thought wasn't about the baby. It was about my father's reaction, how disappointed he would be. So you abandoned your child to please your father?" The judgment in my voice was unmistakable. No, it wasn't that simple. But his influence on me, the way he had shaped my values and priorities, affected my decision. After he died, I did a lot of soul-searching about what kind of man I wanted to be, what kind of father I had become to my own children. "Your real children," You mean, I said bitterly. Daniel flinched. I deserve that. But Wayne, you need to know something. Your mother sent me photos of you over the years. School pictures, mostly. I kept everyone. This revelation stunned me. You did? He nodded. In a locked drawer in my office. I couldn't bring myself to display them. It felt hypocritical given my absence from your life, but I couldn't throw them away either. Did your wife know about me? Yes. From the beginning of our relationship. Catherine has actually been encouraging me for years to reach out, to try to make amends somehow. And your other kids? Do Amelia and Luke know about me? A flash of surprise crossed his face. You know their names. I looked you up online. Daniel nodded. We've told them they have an older brother, but in age-appropriate ways. They're still young. The idea that I had been discussed with these children, these strangers who shared my blood, was surreal. I have so many questions, I admitted. But I don't even know what's important to ask. Ask anything, Daniel said. I owe you complete honesty. So I did. For the next 2 hours, I asked about his life, his career path, his family medical history. I learned that his mother, my biological grandmother, had died of breast cancer in her 50s, something I should monitor given genetic risks. I discovered that his mathematical abilities had helped launch his business success, perhaps explaining my own aptitude for numbers. I heard about his struggle with anxiety in his 30s, which resonated with experiences I'd had but never connected to genetics. Throughout our conversation, Daniel maintained a careful respect for Jack's role in my life. From everything Sarah has told me, Jack has been an exceptional father, much better than I would have been at that age. As our unlikely dinner wound down, Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. I brought something for you, only if you want it. Inside was a business card with his personal contact information and a small thumb drive. What's this? I asked, holding up the drive. Family photos. Mine, but also some of my parents, your biological grandparents. Medical information you should have. And a letter I wrote to you 3 years ago but never had the courage to send. I stared at the small device, aware of its emotional weight. Thank you, I said, surprising myself with my sincerity. As we prepared to leave, Daniel asked carefully, would you be open to meeting again sometime? No pressure. Completely your decision. I considered the question seriously. The meeting had been less catastrophic than I'd feared, more complicated than I'd expected. Maybe. I need time to process all of this. Daniel nodded. Of course. He hesitated before adding, Wayne, whatever relationship develops or doesn't develop between us, please don't punish Jack and Sarah for the choices they made. They acted out of love for you. That's between me and them, I said, not ready to accept advice from someone who had just entered my life. We parted with an awkward handshake that turned into a brief, stiff half-hug. As I watched Daniel walk to his car, I felt oddly hollow, neither the closure I had hoped for nor the cathartic anger I had half expected. Just a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't yet name. Driving home, I realized I had referred to my parents' house as home in my thoughts for the first time in weeks. Despite everything, that's what it remained. The place where Jack and Sarah had created a family around me, regardless of biology. The thumb drive felt heavy in my pocket. I wasn't sure when I'd be ready to view its contents, but its existence represented a connection to a history I hadn't known was mine until now. Despite my tentative reconnection with the concept of home, I still couldn't bring myself to return to my parents' house. Instead, I finally moved out of Tanner's apartment and into a summer sublet with 2 other students from my community college. I resumed my shifts at the auto shop, grateful for the mind-numbing routine of oil changes and tire rotations. I texted my mother regularly, reassuring her I was okay, but I continued to avoid Jack completely. The thought of facing him filled me with a complicated mixture of guilt, anger, and shame that I couldn't untangle. One Tuesday afternoon, I was deep under the hood of a Toyota with a mysterious engine knock when Thomas, my boss, called across the shop floor. Miller, visitor for you in Bay 3. Wiping my greasy hands on a shop rag, I headed toward Bay 3, expecting maybe Grace or even my mother. Instead, I found Jack standing awkwardly by the tool cabinet, looking simultaneously out of place and completely at home in the garage environment. My steps faltered. We stared at each other across 10 feet of concrete floor that felt like a vast canyon. "What are you doing here?" I managed. Jack gestured vaguely around the shop. "Thought maybe we could talk." Thomas said I could use his office, but he trailed off, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of a closed-door conversation. "I'm working," I said, the excuse sounding weak even to my ears. Thomas said, "You're due for a break. Said to take as long as you need." I made a mental note to have a word with Thomas about boundaries. Sighing, I led Jack to the small break room at the back of the shop. It wasn't private. Mechanics wandered in and out for coffee, but it was better than standing in the middle of the work floor. We sat at the scarred table, the fluorescent lights humming above us. Jack looked tired, older somehow, his usually neat appearance slightly rumpled. "How have you been?" he asked, his voice careful. "Fine," I replied automatically. Then, feeling the inadequacy of the response, I added, "Staying with some guys from school. Back at work. You know." Jack nodded. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. "I met Daniel," I finally said. Something flickered across Jack's face. Pain? Fear? Before he controlled his expression. "How did that go?" "Okay, I guess." "Weird. He seems decent." I wasn't sure why I felt the need to downplay the emotional impact of meeting my biological father. Jack nodded again. "Sarah mentioned you were meeting him. I'm glad it was." "Okay." Another silence fell. A mechanic came in, poured coffee, glanced curiously at our tense tableau, and left quickly. "Wayne," Jack finally said, his voice low and strained, "I don't know how to fix this. Tell me what to do, and I'll do it." The naked vulnerability in his tone caught me off guard. Jack had always been the stoic one, the emotional rock of our family. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" The question that had been burning inside me for weeks finally emerged. Jack ran a hand through his graying hair. "We thought we were protecting you. When you were little, it seemed unnecessary to complicate your understanding of family. As you got older, the right moment never seemed to come. The longer we waited, the harder it got. But I had a right to know." "Yes," Jack agreed immediately. "You did. We were wrong to wait so long." His ready admission deflated some of my righteous anger. I had expected defensiveness, not agreement. "I've been so afraid," Jack continued, staring at his calloused hands. "Since the day Sarah told me she was pregnant, I've been afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That I wouldn't be enough. That biology would matter more than everything else. That someday you'd find out the truth and decide I wasn't really your father." His voice cracked slightly. "That I'd lose you." The raw honesty of his fear struck me deeply. "Is that why you sometimes seemed distant?" Jack looked surprised. "Did I? I never meant to be. Maybe I was overcorrecting, trying so hard not to overstep, to respect that there was this other man out there who had a biological claim to you. But he gave up that claim," I pointed out. "You're the one who stayed." "Yes." Jack's eyes met mine directly. "And it was the best decision I ever made, Wayne. The best." I swallowed hard against a sudden tightness in my throat. "Why? Why take on another man's child?" "Because from the moment Sarah showed me your ultrasound picture, you weren't another man's child to me. You were just a child. A baby who needed love, protection, guidance. And then when you were born, Jack's eyes grew distant with memory. They put you in my arms at the hospital. You were so small, with this little tuft of dark hair. You grabbed my finger with your whole hand, and that was it. I was your dad from that moment on." The image he painted was so vivid, so at odds with the calculated decision I had imagined, that I felt momentarily disoriented. "I've been holding something for you," Jack said, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a worn leather notebook. "I thought you might want it someday." I took the notebook cautiously. Opening it, I found dates, measurements, observations, all in Jack's precise engineer's handwriting. "What is this?" I started writing things down the day you were born. Your first smile. First steps. The first word you spoke, car. By the way, which made me ridiculously proud. I wrote down when you lost teeth, learned to ride a bike, made the baseball team. Just everything I didn't want to forget. I flipped through pages spanning 20 years of my life, documented in Jack's steady hand. You did this for 2 decades? Still do. Last entry was about your graduation from the automotive certification program. How proud I was watching you accept that certificate. The notebook trembled slightly in my hands as the magnitude of this ongoing act of love registered. This wasn't the action of a man playing at fatherhood or fulfilling an obligation. This was devotion, pure and sustained. There's something else you should know, Jack said quietly. Daniel sent money every month for 18 years. Child support, though he never called it that. This was news to me. You accepted it? No. We put every penny into a college fund for you. It's there whenever you want it. We never touched it. Why not? You could have used it. Jack looked genuinely confused by the question. Because taking care of you was my responsibility. My privilege, not his. I closed the notebook carefully, suddenly understanding something fundamental about the man sitting across from me. Jack hadn't simply stepped into a vacant role in my life. He had claimed it, owned it, lived it with his whole heart. I'm sorry, I said, the words feeling inadequate, for how I reacted, for what I said at the birthday party. Jack shook his head. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. We should have handled it differently. Still, I shouldn't have disappeared like that. You needed time. I understand that. We sat in silence again, but it was different now, less strained, more contemplative. Will you come home? Jack finally asked, echoing my mother's earlier question. Your room is still there. Lily asks about you every day. I hesitated, still processing everything. Not yet. Soon, maybe. But maybe we could get dinner sometime this week? Just us? The relief and hope that spread across Jack's face made me realize how deeply I had hurt him with my absence. Anytime. You name it. As we stood to leave, Jack hesitated, clearly unsure whether physical contact was welcome. I made the decision for him, stepping forward to hug him briefly but firmly. His arms came around me immediately, the familiar smell of his aftershave and laundry detergent triggering a wave of childhood memories. You're my dad, I said quietly. That hasn't changed. I felt him exhale shakily against my shoulder before we stepped apart. His eyes were suspiciously bright as he nodded and turned to leave. Watching him walk away, I realized Grace had been right all along. DNA hadn't defined my family. Love and choice had. Jack had chosen me every single day for 20 years. Now it was my turn to make a choice. 6 months after the birthday revelation that had shattered my understanding of family, I found myself planning another celebration, a dinner bringing together people who represented different pieces of my now expanded life puzzle. The idea had come to me gradually as I rebuilt relationships and established new ones. A way to acknowledge the complex reality of my family situation while moving forward with clarity and purpose. The journey to this point had been anything but smooth. After my conversation with Jack at the auto shop, I had slowly reintegrated into family life, first with occasional dinners, then weekend visits, and finally moving back home for the remainder of summer before fall semester began. Each step required emotional processing, honest conversations, and a willingness to forgive both my parents and myself. My relationship with my mother healed more quickly. Her relief at my return was palpable, though we had several late-night kitchen conversations where I expressed my lingering hurt over the deception, and she acknowledged the mistake in waiting so long to tell me the truth. We thought we were protecting you, she explained one night as we sat at the kitchen island, sharing ice cream straight from the container. But I see now we were also protecting ourselves from a difficult conversation. I'm so sorry, Wayne. With Jack, reconciliation came through shared activities rather than words. We resumed our weekend car restoration project, a 1967 Mustang we'd been working on since my 16th birthday. In the familiar rhythm of passing tools and solving mechanical problems, we rebuilt our bond alongside the classic engine. Lily, in her 14-year-old wisdom, simply declared one day, This whole thing was super weird and dramatic. But I'm glad you're not being a jerk about it anymore. Before asking for help with her math homework, as if nothing had changed. My relationship with Daniel developed slowly and cautiously. After our initial meeting, we exchanged occasional emails, then progressed to monthly video calls. I learned more about my half-siblings, who were curious about their older brother but too young to fully understand the complicated circumstances. Daniel respected my boundaries and never pushed for more involvement than I was comfortable with. Grace remained a steadfast support, though she didn't hesitate to call me out when I slipped into self-pity or unnecessary drama. You literally have more people who care about you now than you did before, she pointed out pragmatically. Most people would see that as a win. The most challenging aspect was integrating these separate parts of my life, reconciling the Wayne who was Jack and Sarah's son with the Wayne who shared DNA with Daniel. For months, I kept these worlds strictly separated, unable to imagine them coexisting. Then came Daniel's email suggesting he would be in Philadelphia for a business conference, coincidentally the weekend before my 21st birthday. Something clicked into place, and I found myself proposing the unthinkable, a dinner with both Jack and Daniel present. Both men were understandably hesitant. "Are you sure that's what you want?" Jack asked, concern evident in his voice. "I think I need it," I replied honestly. "To see you both in the same room, to stop feeling split between two realities." Jack nodded slowly. "Then I'm there." Daniel's response came via email. "If you're ready for this, I am too. Just let me know how I can make it easiest for everyone." I chose a neutral restaurant, made reservations for 6. Jack, Sarah, Daniel, Grace, Lily, and myself, and spent the week leading up to the dinner, alternating between certainty, this was a terrible idea, and hope that it might provide some closure. The evening arrived with all its awkward potential intact. Initial introductions between Jack and Daniel were stiff but civil, with both men clearly making an effort for my sake. Lily, initially shy around Daniel, quickly warmed up when he mentioned his daughter Amelia, shared her passion for competitive swimming. Grace, my social butterfly, expertly filled conversation gaps and deflected tension with well-timed questions and observations. Halfway through the main course, I glanced around the table and felt a strange sense of peace descend. Here were all these people connected through me, each relationship unique and valuable in its own way. The rigid categories of real family versus biological family began to dissolve, replaced by a more fluid understanding of how people could be connected. As dessert arrived, Jack surprised everyone by raising his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," he said, his voice steady despite what I knew must be complex emotions. "To Wayne, who has handled an impossible situation with more maturity and grace than we had any right to expect, and to family, in all its complicated, messy, wonderful forms." Daniel nodded in agreement, adding quietly, "And to second chances and new beginnings." The dinner ended without dramatic revelations or emotional breakdowns, just a gradual easing of tension and the tentative foundation of a new normal. As we said goodbye in the parking lot, Daniel shook Jack's hand with genuine respect. "Thank you," he said simply, "for being the father Wayne deserved." Jack nodded, a silent acknowledgement passing between the two men who occupied such different spaces in my life. In the weeks that followed, I continued processing the evening and all it represented. The thumb drive Daniel had given me months earlier finally made its way into my computer, where I discovered photos of grandparents I'd never known, and a heartfelt letter expressing regret, hope, and respect for the family who had raised me. My 21st birthday celebration was quieter than the previous year's eventful dinner, just family at home with homemade cake. But family now had a broader meaning, expanded to include connections both chosen and biological. Daniel sent a gift and called briefly, but respectfully declined my mother's invitation to attend, understanding that some spaces still belonged to the family who had raised me. The most profound change wasn't in my external circumstances, but in my understanding of identity and belonging. The initial shock of discovering my biological father had triggered an identity crisis because I had equated DNA with destiny, genetics with genuine connection. Now I understood that while biology provided certain undeniable links, the shape of my eyes, my mathematical aptitude, certain health considerations, it was love, choice, and daily presence that created true family bonds. Jack hadn't shared my DNA, but he had shared his life, the camping trips, the homework help, the driving lessons, the quiet talks about my future, the unwavering support through every milestone. Daniel had contributed to my genetic makeup, but had missed the thousands of moments that constitute a father-son relationship. Both connections had value, but they were fundamentally different. I came to see that my anger at the deception had been justified, but my fear that this revelation somehow invalidated my relationship with Jack had been misplaced. If anything, knowing he had chosen fatherhood made his dedication more meaningful, not less. As I navigated my expanded family landscape, I found unexpected gifts in the complexity. Through Daniel, I gained insight into parts of myself I had never fully understood. Through the crisis with Jack and Sarah, I developed deeper appreciation for the family that had shaped me. Through the entire experience, I learned that identity isn't fixed or simple. It's a constantly evolving tapestry woven from biology, experience, and choice. One evening, sitting on the back porch with Jack as we had countless times before, I finally asked the question that had lingered in my mind. Do you ever regret it? Taking on another man's child? All the complications? Jack looked genuinely confused. Regret you? Never. Not for a single moment. He gazed out at the darkening yard. Wayne, when you become a parent, however that happens, you don't see a child as a complication or a burden. You see them as a miracle, as possibility. I never thought of you as another man's child. From the first moment I held you, you were just mine. His words settled into my heart, a final healing balm on the wounds of that fateful birthday revelation. Life continues to evolve. Daniel and I maintain a friendly relationship that grows slowly on its own timeline. Jack remains my dad in all the ways that matter most. My mother seems lighter, relieved of the secret she carried for so many years. Lily has adapted with typical teenage resilience, now casually referring to Wayne's other dad when relevant. The journey forced me to confront fundamental questions about identity, belonging, and the true meaning of family. I learned that we are more than our genetics, that love is both a feeling and a choice made daily, and that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting but choosing to build something new on complicated foundations. If you're facing your own family revelations or identity questions, remember that initial shock and anger are natural responses, but they don't have to be your final destination. Give yourself time to process, allow for complex emotions, seek support from trusted friends, and remember that biology is just one thread in the complex tapestry of who you are. What family secrets or revelations have changed your understanding of yourself? Have you experienced moments where your identity was suddenly called into question? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if this story resonated with you. Sometimes our greatest growth comes from the moments that challenge everything we thought we knew. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, family isn't just who you're born to. It's also who you choose and who chooses you every single day.